Dialogue.
Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Sahel Governance Forum debuts in Banjul as regional leaders gather to deliberate on future.
Be assured that the Gambia stands ready to work with all stakeholders and partners to implement the resolutions of this gathering and to champion a new era of governance.
Concerns mount as nurses in Nigeria launch nationwide 7-day strike.
If a patient is being taken to the hospital, who is going to do the work of the nurses? So definitely it's going to affect the system.
UN-backed Station Champs call as Ouattara confirms presidential bid in Côte d'Ivoire, and the army secures a $144 million loan to reduce energy dependence and boost the local economy. Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to all of our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. Let's begin this evening in Banjul. The Gambian capital, as a maiden edition of the Sahel Governance Forum, was launched today, focusing on the future of governance in the Sahel region. The event brought together key regional and international leaders, including President Adama Barrow of the Gambia, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, ECOWAS President Dr. Omar Liu Toure, and the UNDP Africa Director and the United Nations Special Representative for West and Central and Sahel. Sakli Janko is at the launch and filed this report.
In a major step toward rethinking governance in West Africa, a two-day high-level forum began in the Gambian capital today. At the heart of the discussions was a new released flagship report developed through a year-long collaboration between UNOWAS, the UNDP and the Office of the Special Coordinator for Development in the Sahel. The report calls for a fundamental shift in the way governance is approached, moving beyond institutions and technical fixes to embrace a more inclusive, locally rooted vision. President Adama Barrow held the meeting for democratic renewal and regional stability.
Be assured that the Gambia stands ready to work with all stakeholders and partners to implement the resolutions of this gathering and to champion a new era of governance, peace and development in the Sahel.
For his part, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan stressed the urgency for investing in agriculture as a lasting solution to the crisis in the Sahel.
Africa south of the Sahara, they are all agrarian societies. And these areas, you must convert what you have in the natural environment to create wealth. And in these areas, the farmers farm for about only 4 or 5 months of the year. So the rest of the year, you almost have no work to do, no productivity. So people living under this condition will surely be poor. And when people are confronted with this kind of scenario, definitely you will expect major conflicts that will come up.
Meanwhile, the ECOWAS President, Dr. Omar Toure, underlined the importance of regional integration and collective action.
Even with their departure, ECOWAS continues to consider the three countries as part of the community, and there is strong evidence that the three countries share similar sense of belonging to the West African community.
United Nations Assistant Secretary General, UNDP Assistant Administrator and Director of Regional Bureau for Africa, Asia Konwa, emphasized that this forum marks a turning point, an opportunity to move beyond fragmented responses and toward a long-term sustainable governance that reflects the lived realities of the Sahel's people. For Newslink in West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sankuli Janko reporting from the International Conference Center in Banjul.
Meanwhile, in a rare and troubling confession, Togo has officially confirmed that more than 60 people have been killed linked in Al-Qaeda attacks carried out this year in its northern region. According to Foreign Minister Robert Duce, members of the jihadist group Jamaat Nusrat Islam wal Muslimin (JNIM) launched 15 separate attacks in northern Togo, killing 54 civilians and 8 Togolese soldiers so far in 2025. This acknowledgement underscores a significant escalation in jihadist violence spreading south from the Sahel into coastal West Africa. While the Sahel insurgency began in Mali over a decade ago, Togo has only recently become a frontline state in the conflict. Minister Duse noted that approximately 8,000 Togolese troops are deployed in the northern border regions, especially those bordering Burkina Faso, with active coordination from ECOWAS and neighboring countries to counter the threat. Thursday's statement marks one of the first public confirmations from the Togolese government of the toll taken by extremist violence on civilians and security forces, a reality long reported by analysts but rarely admitted at the highest levels. Now, nurses across Nigeria have begun a 7-day strike at midnight Tuesday after the government failed to respond to a 15-day ultimatum issued by the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives. Now, the country is bracing for a total shutdown of nurses' services in all federal medical centers, including teaching hospitals, specialist hospitals, and eye centers. The hospitals and primary healthcare centers are also affected, but private hospitals remain fully functional. The industrial action comes barely hours after the Nigerian Medical Association issued its own ultimatum to the government. The development is already disrupting hospital services across the country with implications reaching beyond Nigeria's borders. WDR's Abuja correspondent Usman Umar reports.
From Abuja to Lagos and across all 6 geopolitical zones, members of the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives Federal Health Institutions sector have withdrawn their services. The strike, which began early Wednesday, affects over 70 federal health centers, including teaching hospitals and specialist clinics. The nurses are demanding an improved allowance structure, massive recruitment to close staffing gaps, and the creation of a dedicated nursing department within the health ministry. Morakinyo Rilwan, who leads the union, says the action is a response to years of neglect and failed promises. He insists the strike is driven by grassroots frustration and not just leadership directives. Despite last-minute appeals from the federal government, hospitals have discharged patients, suspended surgeries, and scaled down emergency services, putting lives at risk and weakening confidence in the country's already fragile health system.
If a patient is being taken to the hospital, who is going to do the work of the nurses? So definitely it's going to affect the system.
The situation of the country will become terrible more than this. Because, the nurses, they are the ones taking care of those that are sick.
For these pregnant women, if they are going on strike, what will happen to them? What do you want us to do?
I don't think even the hospital could actually function better optimally without them. The second thing is actually nurses are actually going to strike. It's actually a very germane issue. I think even when you look around what the government is looking how to even put those policy or plans for government, I think nurses are very vital to actually see how they could implement them.
It is important that we, act, call them, let's sit on a round table, let's have a discussion with them and know in what ways can the government come in to help meet some of their demands. But if the government is willing to meet some of the demands, they should please consider, and after the warning strike, they should get back to work.
But the crisis is not just Nigeria. Neighboring West African citizens who often seek specialist treatment in Nigerian hospitals are now left without options. And with more Nigerian nurses emigrating in search of better conditions abroad, the sub-region faces a worsening health workforce crisis. Health experts warn that if the situation is not addressed quickly, it could lead to cross-border health emergencies and deepen medical tourism outflows to Europe and the Middle East. With the strike scheduled to last until August 5 and another looming ultimatum from the Medical Association, Nigeria's healthcare sector, and those who depend on it within and beyond the borders could be headed for a prolonged uncertainty. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Côte d'Ivoire, the United Nations has responded to a request by Ivorian opposition politician Tidjane Cham. The UN's delayed response comes as President Alassane Ouattara announces his presidential bid for the October 25 elections. ineligible to participate in the upcoming polls. Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, called on the Ivorian state to restore Cham's political rights. Abdullah Hassan report.
In a statement on Tuesday, the United Nations called on Alassane Ouattara to allow the former banker to exercise his political rights. Tidjane Cham, like several opposition political leaders, has been removed from the electoral list and therefore unable to run in the next presidential election scheduled for October. The UN Rights Committee, which the leader of PDCI RDA had summoned weeks ago, said it had decided not to grant the author's request for interim measures but invites the state to take all necessary measures to ensure that Tidjane Cham can exercise his political rights under Article 25 of the Covenant. The committee maintains that Cham's complaint is under consideration. As a reminder, the PDCI disqualified presidential candidate was removed from the electoral list following a court ruling regarding his past dual nationality. While all excluded candidates for the October elections, including former President Laurent Gbagbo, have accused the current regime of political maneuvering, the ruling RHDP has denied any pressure or influence on the judicial system. The Independent Electoral Commission, for its part, has promised to deliver an inclusive, transparent and incredible polls as it opens portal for the submission of candidacies. The process ends on August 25, 2025. In the meantime, citizens and experts alike await the government's line of action regarding UN's response.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. In the meantime, the Malian Armed Forces, FARMA says it carried out a precision operation on July 16 in northern Kidal, targeting IKM officials amid increased military pressure against jihadist groups, particularly the Islamic State in the Sahel and the Gao and Menaka regions. The Malian Armed Forces, in a statement, noted that the target were international leaders directly involved in planning and coordinating the actions of the group to support Islam and Muslims GSIM in Mali and the Sahel. Augustin Koli completes the story.
This announcement comes as the Malian army intensifies its offensives against jihadist groups in the northeast of the country, particularly against the Islamic State in the Sahel. Since January 2025, several senior members of this organization have been captured or neutralized during separate operations in the Gao and Menaka regions. More recently, on July 21, the Malian army announced that it had neutralized Suleimani Ak Bakawa, alias Sodat, presented as one of the notorious leaders of the ERS, during an operation in Chaman within the Menaka region. He was accused of being involved in several targeted attacks and assassinations against civilians and soldiers. The army affirms that it remains mobilized to restore peace and security in Mali and the Central Sahel. Meanwhile, faced with the deteriorating security situation, the Malian authorities have decided to extend the curfew in the Kais region for a period of 30 days from July 1 to the 30th, 2025. The announcement was made by the region's governor, Brigadier General Musa Sumari, on Wednesday. The measure applies every night from midnight to 5 a.m. throughout the region. Implemented following simultaneous attacks on July 1, this curfew prohibits all movement of people and vehicles during this time slot, with the exception of defense and security forces and duly authorized ambulances. The governor of Kais praised the resilience of the population and the determination of the armed forces.
Augustin Koli filed that report. Meanwhile, a deadly assault on a military base in Dago, northern Burkina Faso, has left around 50 soldiers dead. Locals say about 100 militants stormed the base on Monday, killing troops before looting and setting it ablaze. The armed group Jamaat Naz Islam wa Muslimin, or JNIM, is suspected of carrying out the attack. Although the military has not issued a public statement, JNIM has been behind many recent deadly operations across the region. Burkina Faso continues to battle an escalating security crisis. Armed groups now control large swathes of the economy of the country, especially in rural regions far from the capital. We'll go to Ghana now, where the armed forces has launched full-scale peace enforcement operations in Baku and surrounding areas following a directive from President John Dramani Mahama in response to renewed violence that has claimed several lives, including a traditional leader and 3 senior high school students. In a statement issued on Tuesday, the GAF announced that it had moved from peacekeeping to what it described as robust and purposeful peace enforcement operations across Baku, Binduri, Nalerigu and Zebila. The military said the decision was triggered by an upsurge in attacks, reprisal killings, and armed activity that pose a threat to national security. The shift in military posture follows a string of high-profile killings linked to the Boko conflict. Here is Ghana military PRO, Naval Captain Veronica Adjo Arin.
The Ghana Armed Forces takes direct instructions from our President and Commander-in-Chief, and the directive is to step up our effort into a peace enforcement, and that is exactly what we are doing. The discussions alongside, we cannot be distracted to those discussions for now. Our aim is to ensure that those creating the problems in the Boko, Binduri, Nalerugu lays down their arms, hand over the weapons, and possibly we could go back to peacekeeping as we were. We are going to be dominating the area more, and we are going to be firmer on the ground than we have been. And so we are appealing to the good people of Boko and its environs to please respect the laid down rules, the curfews. They should make sure that they respect the curfews, as we have stated. So we are going to be more firm on the ground. And as such, we have even increased our numbers, but I'm unable to give you the specific numbers.
Ghana's military PRO, Naval Captain Veronica Adjo Arin speaking there. Staying in Ghana, the opposition New Patriotic Party NPP has officially kicked off the nomination process for its presidential flag bearer ahead of the 2028 general elections. This marks the beginning of a crucial and closely watched contest within the party. The NPP has imposed a freeze on all campaign activities by presidential hopefuls until after the upcoming Akwata parliamentary by-election. From Accra, Nade Tite report.
The New Patriotic Party kicked off its presidential aspirants nominations starting Tuesday, July 29, 2025. The nomination window will remain open until Thursday, August 28, 2025, as announced by the party General Secretary Justin Kudia-Frimpong.
The presidential primaries shall be held on Saturday, January 31, 2026. An aspiring presidential candidate can procure the nomination forms after the payment of a non-refundable application fee of 100,000 Ghana cedis, and it must be done through a banker's draft. Again, an aspiring presidential candidate shall pay a refundable filing fee of 500,000 Ghana cedis.
Right after the nominations opened, Kwabna Eje Ejapong, an outspoken former legislator, Kennedy Ohene Ejapong, officially declared their intentions to contest for the flag bearer position, adding renewed energy and competition to the race. Other leading figures expected to vie for the position include former Vice President and former flag bearer Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, former Education Minister Dr. Yawose Educhum, and former Agriculture Minister Dr. Brian Champong. The party has imposed a freeze on all campaign activities until after the upcoming Akwitia parliamentary by-election to consolidate efforts to retain the seat. The NPP leadership hopes these measures will help prevent internal divisions and build a strong front going into the 2028 elections. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar and around the world on WADR.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Sahel Governance Forum debuts in Banjul as regional leaders gather to deliberate on the future. Concerns mount as nurses in Nigeria launch nationwide 7-day strike. UN backs Tijan Cham's call as Ouattara confirms presidential bid in Côte d'Ivoire. Still ahead in the news, Niamey secures a $144 million loan to reduce energy dependence and boost local economy. We don't have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we're streaming live on WADR.org. Now let's take you to Liberia, where it's faced with high fuel prices and artificial scarcity of petroleum product on Tuesday made its first major import in more than 40 years. The Liberia Petroleum Refining Company, on behalf of the state, received 10,000 metric tons of petroleum products from Ghana, aimed at improving the supply chain, distribution and access to Liberians in all regions. The import coincided with President Joseph Boakai's assessment tour of a 17,000 cubic meter gasoline tank in Monrovia. The multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art facility, currently near completion, will also serve as a petroleum testing laboratory. Our correspondent Abraham Parker has more details in his report.
During an assessment tour of the petroleum storage facility located in Monrovia, President Joseph Boakai underscored the overall objectives of the initiative. These are meant to help Liberia achieve economic stability and energy independence.
What you do for this country, it won't matter. We have come through a very difficult time. Our own personal interest can be put first, but it wouldn't help the country. It won't help the future of children.
Boakai's tour of the state-of-the-art facility coincided with the first major importation of 10,000 metric tons of petroleum products into the country. Amos Toye, managing director of the Liberia Petroleum Refinery Company, stated that the move directly supports the government's vision of self-sufficiency and economic resilience.
LPRC is not going into the retail market. It's important to stress that. LPRC was tapped at importation and gave a bulk product to licensed importers. At the same time, this is about empowering Liberian businesses. Through this process, we want to create more middle income earners.
Until this important Tuesday, Liberia, a country of some 5 million people, solely relies on independent petroleum marketers for its energy needs. This results in high pump prices of petroleum products, artificial scarcity, and a difficult business environment for some business owners, a situation the state hopes to immediately face. Energy experts are for their part calling on the authorities to sustain the multi-million-dollar investment and ensure Liberians buy PMS at affordable rates across all regions. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview takes us to Côte d'Ivoire as reactions continue to build up among the population after the official announcement of Alassane Ouattara's candidacy for the October 2025 presidential election. Our guest, Wendiam Hervé Laconde, regional security and political expert, describes political situation as delicate. According to him, he perceives a heightened tension due to the ineligibility status of high-profile position politicians.
This candidacy of President Ouattara is creating a kind of dilemma for ECOWAS. As far as there is no guarantee that Tidiane Cham or Laurent Gbagbo will, compete, I think, violence is going to be likely. But I think it's going to be localized.
It appears that today, with some of the regional leaders, two things are playing out. First, is either the lack of plan, a succession plan, or the fact that the constitution today is being abused. Which one of these two allows for what we are seeing today? What is the problem with leadership there?
The problem here is, I think it's not about, leaders per se. I think it's about, the rule of the game. I think, most of the leaders in Francophone Africa, I think, the issue is really being able to internalize, constitutional rules. We've seen in Togo, President Faure Gnassingbé, also trying to change the nature of a regime to stay in power. We've seen also this in Côte d'Ivoire. So the question here is, how to, be able to internalize democratic rules. And this is, I think a question that, with, difficult answers, because in the case of Côte d'Ivoire, I think, there was no serious attempt, I think, to really entrench democratic, practices. As far as, leaders, try to, stick to the rule of the game, we're going to, see this kind of, constitutional, manipulation to remain in power.
And so how do we expect the situation to change in the coming days. What must ECOWAS do if there is still a room for them to amend the situation before it snowballs into what many would not be hoping and praying for?
I think for ECOWAS, it's going to be really difficult to maneuver here, because in the case of Cote d'Ivoire, I think in the next coming weeks, Cote d'Ivoire and President Alassane Ouattara is likely to submit his candidacy, and it will be up to the Constitutional Court to validate or not his candidacy. And I think that Ouattara will probably try to fashion his candidacy as a candidacy that is constitutional, and as far as it has the green light from the Constitutional Court. Now for ECOWAS, I think they should maybe adopt a pragmatic stance, trying to accommodate with the military rulers. What I'm saying is not that they should accept military coups, but trying to be realistic, because the Sahelian countries we are talking about, these are also countries with weak political institutions, and coups are part of the rule of the game. And I think to address this issue, we need reforms. And we don't end military coups with sanctions. It's about conducting structural reforms, and this is something ECOWAS and international partners should do for these countries, to make sure that there is a chance for democracy and rule of law in these countries.
Wendy Harvey Lakonde is a regional security and political expert. Well, in sport news, over 150 of Africa's most promising young table tennis players from 17 countries are gathering in Lagos, Nigeria for the 2025 African Youth Championships, a key qualifier on the road to the Dakar 2026 Youth Olympic Games. Organized by the International Table Tennis Federation, ITTF, the championship will see emerging stars such as Tunisia's under-19 sensation Wassim Messit compete alongside top contenders from Egypt, Nigeria, Algeria and Uganda. Winners of the team event will automatically qualify for the 2025 ITTF Youth World Championships in Romania, scheduled for November 23 to 30. In the meantime, young Senegalese central defender Abdoulaye Faye has joined French side FC Lorient on a one-season loan from Bayer Leverkusen. At just 20 years old, Faye is looking to gain more playing time in Ligue 1 after signing with the German club earlier this year. Trained at Senegal's Jamba Academy, Faye previously made his mark in Sweden with Hacken and Ogriet, where he played 34 matches. Son of Senegal under-17 coach Pape Ibrahima Faye, Abdoulaye says the loan is a big step forward. He remains on a contract with Bayer Leverkusen until 2030. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Fali Luso and Sheikh Jai for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WDR English. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship gender program 50-50. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.